One of the reasons I've always loved sports is sports provide the chance to instantly be part of a community and to be part of something bigger than yourself. Martin Richardson will explain how he created a movement through the Dawg Nation Hockey Foundation with a community of hockey players to help families in their deepest time of need, and how that movement has grown to provide millions of dollars for suffering families and also develop some exciting visions for the future for able-bodied and disabled hockey players. On this episode of Making Our World Better.
Welcome to the Making Our World Better podcast, where you will find motivation and encouragement through lively conversations with inspirational people who every day are making our world a better place. Now, here's your host, Jay Clark.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have a conversation with Martin Richardson, President, CEO, and dog father of the Dawg Nation Hockey Foundation, an organization that uses the game of hockey to build community and serve others. Martin was born in England, but grew up in Colorado, loving sports and the outdoors. He's been a practicing CPA for over 25 years. As a graduate of Metro State University, Martin starred for the Roadrunners on the soccer field, earning him a place in the university's Hall of Fame. His hockey passion runs deep and started on his parents' outdoor rink in Indian Hills, Colorado. In 2012, he won the Channel 7 Everyday Hero Award and was a finalist for the Colorado Youth Soccer Coach of the Year. In 2014, Martin was honored as the Colorado Rapids Community MVP and finished second in the Major League Soccer league-wide voting for the prestigious MLS Community MVP. That's not local, that's a national award. In 2021, Martin was a semifinalist for the NHL's coveted Willie O'Ree Community Award. Again, a national award. Awesome. Most importantly, Martin is married to Cindy and is the father to 3 daughters. Martin, thanks for being with us.
Well, there's a lot there.
That's a lot there. It's
I got a good
impressive.
PR guy, it sounds like.
To start off, how would you describe Dawg Nation to somebody that doesn't know anything about it?
It's just tapping into a community, a really unique community, the hockey community, and helping folks within that community. And really probably the easier way is to kind of tell you how it started. And we were just a bunch of guys that played hockey, and in that locker room where there were bartenders and students and CEOs and attorneys and CPA like me, but really kind of all walks of life were on this team that we would get to. And that's no different than any team locally here in the Denver area. It's a softball team or what have you. And the difference was with our team, in 2009, we'd been playing together for about 6-7 years, and our team was called the Dawgs, hence the Dawg Nation thing. But we weren't a nonprofit. We were just some guys that once a week.
Right. It
wasn't like we didn't love our wives and girlfriends, but it was one night a week. Boys will be boys, and we would get together. And in a 9-day period in February of 2009, of the 15 players in that locker room, not one, not two, but 3 of them all were diagnosed with some sort of cancer.
Wow.
So at that point, I literally and figuratively would pass my hat around the locker room and say,
wow,
Andy, I'm going to go by Andy's house if anybody wants to join me. I'm going to be visiting Dave who wants to join me. And each time we would do that, we would rally, most of the team would go, and it wasn't that we gave Danny $250. It was the fact that we showed up at his his hospital room and snuck in some Molsons and had a signed banner behind his bed there, and that he knew he wasn't alone. That was really the reason. And all 3 of those guys, they literally would work with their oncologists and their treatments and build their treatments around our hockey schedule. No kidding, like so they could play. And still not at times, especially Andy, he had stage 4 colon cancer. He struggled, but it was still really important for him to get on the ice, and he did. And unbelievably, in 2009, a 4th guy on our team,
oh my gosh,
then started to get not well. And I went to lunch with him one day. His name was Jack Kelly, very much like me. He was a college soccer player. I was a college soccer player.
Yeah.
He coached kids soccer. I coached kids soccer. He had 3 daughters, no sons. I have 3 daughters, no sons. And I was CPA when he was a financial guy. So when he got sick, it was almost like looking at myself. And going,
right. You're looking in the mirror.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that could be me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he ended up with something, an autoimmune disease. And over the next 6 months, he ended up with passing away in April of 2010. And when that happened, I took his girls aside and I said, I want to do something in your dad's honor. I don't know what it is, but I want to do something. And several months later, I started this thing called Dawg Nation Hockey Foundation. And basically it was really to help people like what was in my locker room. It's families where not always the breadwinner, but somebody in the family is going through tough times, and the family itself is in financial crisis. And what can we do both to support them financially, but also mentally and emotionally, and maybe even spiritually. And that's what kicked this thing off. And believe it or not, 12 years later, we've been able to hand out close to $3.5 million.
$3.5 million. That's amazing. So the whole thing started from this place of, we got to do something to help our friends. And now it's blown up into an organization that's pumped in $3.5 million.
Isn't that crazy?
Stunning.
Yeah. So what we do is we tap into, I was literally on the phone this morning with a gentleman, and his daughter is on the heart transplant list, and they're having to uproot. They lived in Colorado, moved to Wisconsin based on a job with the wife. It looked like things were going great. Bought a new place out there. And then their youngest is going to need to have a heart transplant. And so they're going to be a lot of financial burdens.
Yeah,
the cost of that. But he's probably not going to see this podcast, which is good, but he thinks he's just coming out on Monday night for our golf tournament. And I invited him to the dinner part, and they're big Avs fans. And Jared Bednar, the head coach, is a friend of mine. He's coming out, and
nice.
Have them sit next to Jared Bednar. And my brother's a fairly recent heart transplant recipient himself, and this little girl's on the heart transplant list. So there's a lot of connections there, and they think they're just coming out to get a really cool experience. But they're
that'll be awesome. So was there a moment in this when, you're passing the hat in the locker room? Was there a moment where it was like, this could be something a lot bigger than just passing the hat in the locker room, which it's obviously become? But was there that moment where you were like, whoa, we're onto something here?
No, not really. Because the original started with that year in 2010, Jack had passed in April, and other guys were back in the lineup, and we thought, well, that was good. And I was an international finance director at Oracle at the time, and had a busy job and other stuff, and a family, and I was like, thought, well, I did tell those girls I was going to do something, but I still was kind of struggling what it was. But then on Christmas Eve of 2010, I was clearing off this pond that you mentioned earlier, and for a Christmas Day skate with the neighborhood. And I ended up getting a phone call, and I picked it up, and it was Andy Gary, who was the one with colon cancer, stage 4. And he looked like he was doing really well. And then he called me on Christmas Eve telling me that in tears, that he didn't think he was going to be making it. And he had 3 kids, all under 9 years old at the time. And that was really what kicked it off for me. I said, wow, I got to do something for my buddy Andy. And what if we put a hockey tournament on? But what if we started it and did it as a nonprofit? We'd be able to get a lot more like donations and sponsorships and things. So literally 1 week later on New Year's Day, 2011. So 1-1-1-1. It's easy to remember the day. My goalie and defenseman and left wing and a few other guys, we all threw $100 in the middle of the table, and they all looked at me and said, figure out how to make a 501c3. And I did. And,
awesome.
And 3 months later, we were able to make Andy one of our very first recipients. And
that's
today,
fantastic.
He's a teammate of mine. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's cool. So that's really out. But no, there was not the first year. I mean, everything we did seemed to sell out, get a lot of interest. And I guess that first year, even in the first year, it's like, whoa, we just did a hockey tournament, we got that filled up. And then we followed that up with a comedy night, and that sold out or close to it. And then we did a golf tournament, and that sold out. And we were like, well, it's clearly there's a need,
community, right?
A market, I guess, so to speak.
Right.
But it didn't really take off till the last few years, like really take off. I mean, it was already
right. Well, and this is one of the beautiful things about sports. You've been around sports your whole life, played at a very high level, is that it almost generates this community. Talk about volunteers with your organization who are just, they're just part of the hockey community. I learned about your organization from my friend Jeff Kingery, who I've known for 35 years. I didn't even know until recently, last few years, that he's a big hockey guy. Yeah. So he found you. So tell me how the community kind of brings in people, and that's helped you grow.
I credit a lot of the growth of this with something that you wouldn't have seen 10, 15 years ago. And it's because of social media. Yeah. And we had early on, like our very first tournament, literally it was old school, knocking on locker room doors and walking in and saying, here's what I'm doing. There's a referee that was hit by a car. There's a couple guys with cancer. Here's the things that we're going to do on this. Can you play this tournament? And I had a couple connections at that time. One of the guys I played with, his brother was a equipment manager in the NHL and was able to get us like pretty amazing stuff for being a brand new nonprofit. Alex Ovechkin signed helmet, things like that. Nice. So that was on the early end. And then now we'll do a post and literally thousands of people read it. So
isn't that fantastic?
Yeah. If I say, hey, we really unfortunately have to turn away volunteers.
Wow.
Because we don't have enough spots to do them like this.
Right.
Golf tournament coming up this weekend. I've probably had, next Monday, I probably had 40 people asked to volunteer. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah. So they see what we're doing and seeing the impact, and they just want to be part of it.
Talk to me a little bit about, I think one of the other cool things that you're doing is the sled hockey piece. You used to work with some disabled sports stuff and always thought it was awesome. So talk a little bit about how not only are you doing all this great stuff to help people in their time of serious need, but you're also branching out now and doing stuff with sled hockey and helping disabled hockey players.
Yeah, your timing on that's perfect, because we literally this weekend took 3 sled hockey players, including truly the Wayne Gretzky of sled hockey. His name's Declan Farmer, fly fishing for the first time.
Nice.
And we have these epic pictures of these 2 guys diving into one fishing hole it's a beaver dam there, and I'm above it with a fish on that's jumping out of the water, and 2 guys without legs diving into the water right below me.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
That's really cool.
But yeah, the disabled sled thing, I'm not even sure how it came about. I think we'd just gotten big enough and they reached out, and they typically need financial help. And so there was some reach out to us like, hey, can you come to a event and be a sponsor? And at that point we were starting to grow quite a bit. Right. And so people knew who we were, and they knew I knew a lot of the guys on the Avs and different things like that. So they were like, can you get a signed thing? Can you get this? And I think that's kind of how it happened. And then my son-in-law put a tournament on, a dog tournament down in Colorado Springs. We have multiple teams, and his Colorado Springs Dogs put a tournament on. And it being down near in Colorado Springs area, it was in Monument. There was a lot of sled players down there because of the military guys too.
Right.
And so we actually did a sled exhibition at that event. And when I did that, I got to meet a bunch of those guys. And then at that point, I realized there was not just a financial need, but a support need and just an awareness need in that whole area. And so since then, we've actually then gone the other direction and helped recipients of ours that were paralyzed or terrible things happened to them, and said, hey, let me introduce you to this other guy. Your hockey career is not over. And that's kind of how that's happened. And now they're a giant, like this weekend, they're a giant part of what we do.
You obviously have a calling to help others. I mean, it's one thing to say, boy, I really should do something for my friend Andy or my friend Jack, but to put that into action, that's a little something extra. Where do you think that comes from for you?
It's funny. I get asked that a lot. And I asked my mom, and she says to me that you were like that a incredibly young age. And she reckons back to this. And I said, I don't know about that. And she goes, no, I remember when you were literally like 6 years old and all the kids would run to the bus and you want to be the first one on the bus and get the best seat and this and that. And she said she remembers a little boy running and tripping and falling. And I was always really fast. So I got to always be the first one basically. And she said, all the kids just ran past that kid and you stopped and picked him up and wiped his tears from him and held his hand and walked him onto the bus. And she said, there isn't many people would do that.
Right.
So she said that she saw that in me at a really young age, that but for me, it's a good feeling. And I know it is for everybody, but special good feeling for me when I can lift someone up when they're down.
Well, salute. That's a little bit of an outlier. I mean, that's not how everybody looks at life, and I admire you for that. So tell us about this vision that you all have to build a new hockey facility in Castle Pines that'll be will be a home for the sled hockey?
Yeah, it would be a home for everybody, basically. The NHL, I'm stealing their mantra, but they have a marketing slogan called "Hockey is for everyone."
Yep.
And this was kind of twofold. As Dawg Nation was growing, I was trying to look at it and going, how is this going to be a sustainable model? Because right now, the way we're set up is the vast majority of our revenue comes from putting events on.
Right.
A golf tournament, a hockey tournament, and different things like that. And these are really big events. They take a lot of work. They take a lot of work. Yeah. And at some point I'm going to need to back off or slow down or retire or something. Right. And I thought, is this really a sustainable model the way it's built? And so a few years back, I often wake up thinking in the middle of the night and don't want to wake my wife up and go in the other room. And I kind of just jotted down in a notebook, like, what if you were able to build an arena that's truly for everyone, for boys, girls, young, old, men, women, able-bodied, disabled, veterans, civilians, and truly make a place where hockey is for everyone and not just say it. So, but what if you were able to do that same thing? And what you did is you built it with the first, with the donations and starting with a municipality donating land. And then you go to general contractors and architects and roofers and all the way down and said, what if you built it? Because the biggest difficult thing of running a hockey rink is the cost of it. It's the cost of capital.
Oh gosh, they're not. I mean, we ran a basketball facility and we didn't have to keep track of ice, and that was plenty expensive. So
and so that's why you don't see new ones come up. Right. It's not like people don't like hockey, and it's why you see them go out of business. It's why you see Park and Rec's not build them. And I knew that from years ago because I'd actually thought about at one point. My boss played college hockey and I played college soccer, and we were software accountants, and we thought, boy, this would be really cool if we did this. And we built a whole model of a whole facility of indoor soccer and ice hockey. And we realized pretty quickly that three things were going to happen. One, we were going to both work 100 hours a week. Number two, we were going to be bankrupt. And number three, we'd both be divorced. So we said,
not a good track.
But I always knew why they didn't work. They didn't work because of two really big things. And one's property taxes are really, really high on something that's worth that much. Yeah. And then the second thing is and the bigger one is the cost of capital. If you run it as a nonprofit, you eliminate one of those right off the top, which is the property tax.
Right.
And if you then are able to dig in and eliminate or at least greatly reduce the cost of the capital by getting all these in-kind donations and then following that up with donations to a charity, i.e. us, and say, what if you built this arena that way, where at the end of the day, it's for the board members, they're not making any money on it because it's part of a nonprofit. And as a nonprofit, if there's no cost of capital and there's no property taxes, conservatively, this brings in $1.5 million of profit, not revenue, a year. And so then you're able to take that profit and pour it back into the community, perpetually forever. And then I can retire.
Yeah.
Also, like I could quit because you still do your events and all that other stuff, but
Right.
you have much more control of how you can do that. But you also just from every day, it's generating revenue every day.
You're not relying on the events either.
You're not relying on the events. And so that was the model, but and so that's been my focus for the last few years, but it is extremely difficult. Like this is the hardest thing I've ever tried to do.
No doubt.
And so, but we did, right. An incredible donation by the city of Castle Pines. And so we actually have 12 acres at I-25 at Castle Pines Parkway to do this.
Awesome.
And then we've got big companies, MOA Architecture, Saunders Construction, Lolly. Yeah. So these are big companies that have also, well, we want to be part of this. And if it got going, I know there would be tons more. And conservatively, we probably are looking at the estimates from my folks at Saunders and at MOA are 10 to 15 million in in-kind donations. But mind you, if we paid from everything, if you bought that land and you did all that stuff, this is a $65 million project. Because it's 3 sheets of ice. One is actually a large enough arena that would be able to host the World Championships of sled hockey.
Wow.
So the ambition is really big. It's I mean, I'm a conservative guy, so maybe too big, but at the same time, when I look at it on paper and when we do our presentation and some of the people we're in front of, Jay, I just pinch myself because it's like, how is this little CPA guy from Oracle even go to dinner with this guy or go to the Mavs game with this guy? But the fact is I do. And we have enough people in our network, if I can, like, I don't know if convince is the right word, but get on board with this and see the same vision I do. Yeah. We have the network to do it. It just is. It's tough though, because there's so many great causes out there. And so and I'd be naive to not think that. And so that's what you're doing. You're trying to shift some of those dollars your way to be able to do this. So,
and it takes a lot of persistence. I mean, it took us darn near 10 years to build the Gold Crown Fieldhouse out in Lakewood. So
did it really?
Yeah. So like I say, without ice, it's not easy. So I applaud you guys for doing it. How much does it help when the local NHL club is so strong and, now you're friends with Coach Bednar, he's a Stanley Cup champion, that's got to have a little positive spillover onto you guys, hopefully.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Like there's things like where I'll be able to utilize it on a really easy level. For instance, like, hey, you can go to lunch with the Dawg father and Jared Bednar. And how much would you bid on that? And so those are simple. Those aren't going to build rinks, but those are going to certainly help families and
open up the community a little bit more.
Yeah. And it definitely, especially with them being so good right now, like anything Avs, they're going to grasp that. And we're extremely fortunate to know some of those guys, like literally personally. I just went fishing 2 weeks ago with Joe Sakic. And
Milan Hajduk's on your ambassador board.
Yeah. Jan Hajduk was calling me before you came on. So there's a lot of these guys that they'll raise their hand and go, hey, I want to help. And none of them are doing that for money. I'll even talk to Milan about it. Like, what if this grew? And nope, like, I just want to do this with you. And
that's awesome.
So yeah, it's a massive part and they're parts to get to someone else, including Jan himself has connected me with 2 or 3 people that I would not have connected without Jan Hajduk. And they're and it's not really just because of his name. It's partly because of I'm tapping into his network of friends. His daughter was a horseback rider. So, this family's horseback.
One thing will lead to another.
And so, so there's ones like that too. And it works both ways for me too, because Yanni will call me and I'll introduce him to somebody that he's working with now too. So becomes a big network, really, what it does.
Right. You've been around sports a long time. I've been around sports a long time. The hockey community is a little different in the way that it just feels a little bit more open, guys are more willing to throw their arms around you. Is that a perception on my part, or is that a reality?
No, it's a reality. I kind of wonder that because I played soccer for so long, and I would see definitely a bit of that in our soccer community too.
Right.
But there wasn't a rallying point. There wasn't a Dawg Nation soccer, and I think it would have worked there, but maybe not to this level.
Right.
And I kind of think of it as there's way less players. Like when I coach soccer, I might play a team from Canyon City that I'm coaching.
Right.
And I might not see those kids till like 3 years later at another team.
Right.
With hockey, they see the same families over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And because there's way less of them. And at the end of the day, they're competitive and they want to win. And of course there's challenges in that, but at the same time, nobody wants to see anyone fall on hard times or be injured or get sick. And I think what happens with hockey is you see it's so much smaller that you're like, whoa, I know that little girl. I saw her at the thing, as opposed to some of these other. I could be wrong on that, but there also just is a big culture of giving, it feels like, because they rally over and over and over again.
Well, I have to ask, so a Hall of Fame soccer player, how does a Hall of Fame soccer player end up playing hockey on a lake behind his parents' house?
Yeah. So I loved hockey. It was my favorite sport as a kid, but it was unattainable financially. So
it's a pretty steep entry point. That's one of the issues with hockey.
Yeah. I mean, we had immigrated from Europe when I was a kid, and so soccer should be pretty much in your blood at that point. But, but I always loved hockey. Even from a really young age, I would listen to the Denver Spurs on my transistor radio. And it was like what I truly loved. And we'd flood the driveway and on crappy skates, attempt to skate. And when I was in high school, we moved up near Evergreen, and the house that my parents bought had a pond with it. And
nice.
So that became my Friday, Saturday, Sunday activity, and hand-me-down skates, different things like that. But we would just play pond hockey for hours on end, and did that all. Ended up then, for the first time when I was in high school, for the first time ever, we would rent ice in Arvada, and we would all get out, and guys had football helmets on and pillows tied to them and all. I mean, they wouldn't even let you on the ice today if we did. And we'd go play. And, but all through that, I was a pretty decent soccer player. So I was able to play collegiately and even a little bit after that. And at the same time, when I was at Metro State, I actually started the hockey club there.
No kidding.
Yeah. So we were terrible, but it was like not like now. Now they're really good.
Yeah, they are good.
Really good. And but back in the day for me, it was just something it was really a love. And you would be surprised how similar those two games are.
Yeah.
Like one's just faster, but a lot of the game, both of those games, the better players are the ones that read what happens away from the ball or the puck.
Yep.
And that can find with basketball, the person, the guys that sees those backdoor cuts before someone else does, they might have all the skills in the world, but if you don't see those gaps in those lanes, and for me, I just see them. Like even when I coach soccer, I'll take a kid aside, really good little player, and I'm like, do you not see that? No, I didn't see that. It's like, but you know it too. But by coaching basketball, you're just like, and so, but that's really why. And for years, we honestly used that pond for probably 25, 30 years. And actually would bring little kids up once we became Dawg Nation. And it was really early on fundraisers where we would make, maybe $200 that night or whatever, and serve hot chocolate and stuff. But
that's great.
What happened from one of those nights is, they were kids that had never ever played on a pond, never played outside. They just played it, because their parents would take them, and I would have these parents, some of them way better hockey players than me because they were the coaches and stuff. I would make them sit on the bench and on the side, and there's a cooler beer and there's some hot chocolate and schnapps, but these kids are just going to have fun tonight. And it was really hard for some of those parents to,
that's
like really hard. And I encouraged like silly celebrations and things like that. And
let them play.
Yeah, what happened on that pond was one of the kids that came there, and he was kind of a little maniac kid, but his dad ran Comedy Works, and that's how he came, and he's like, "This thing's really cool," and we'd only been around like a month or 2 months, and he said, "Why don't we do a comedy night at Comedy Works?" And they donated.
Wow.
So that doesn't happen unless I have that pond. And Now what's kind of cool is that kid just got a hockey scholarship. And he's going to play at Maine.
Oh, wow.
That same little kid.
That's
It was
awesome.
the maniac. I used to have to try and pull him off, and I'd be like, "You got to quit body checking kids into snowbanks. They're crying." And he was like 8 years old. I kept reprimanding him, and here he is, going to play NCAA Division I hockey.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So we talked about the facility, but what is it in the future that really gets you excited about Dawg Nation?
Just the one thing that we've done recently, and it's tough. It's another tough branch off, but we started a move into other areas, and so now there's a St. Louis branch.
Yeah, I saw St. Louis, right?
Yeah, and a couple guys in Minnesota, including Jan Hayda, they want to do a Minnesota branch. Jan has moved up there recently, so
you got proof of concept, right?
Yeah, you got the proof of concept, and so it's a challenge because you're trying to keep your brand the same,
right?
There, and so it's going to be tricky to do that. But I could see that's a pretty exciting part. If each year it's kind of fun to see the growth. Where last year we were able to hand out checks right at around $800,000.
Wow.
And so this year we'll probably be right around that too, maybe a little bit north of there. But to watch that go from the very first year, where we were really proud of ourselves when we handed out checks in our very first year of around $15,000 to $20,000.
Sure,
that was cool. And here we are now. I mean, that's what one check is.
That's fantastic.
Just one family. Yeah. So that's really kind of what I see. Exciting future for us, but
yeah.
Of course, I hope it includes a rink, but that would be the creme de la creme. But I also know that's a really, really big lift.
Yeah, that's a big lift. So before I let you go, I'd like to finish with what I call the Fab Four questions.
Okay.
First one is, what's something you will read, listen to, or watch today?
Read, listen to, or watch. I'll probably pop on a little Spittin' Chicklets a little bit later today.
Nice. That's a good one. So can you tell me, is there a role model for you that's really made a difference in leading you to this Dawg Nation and all these incredible things that you guys have accomplished?
Yeah, I don't know if it as much of a role model as just an inspiration, and that was Jack Kelly, where I talked on earlier, and I still talk to his wife and his kids, his widow and his kids on a fairly regular basis. But for me, it's I want to just continue his where people are still talking about him. It's been since 2010, and his initials are still on my jersey. And when I look straight in front of me here over the top of the computer, I see him and his 3 daughters. And
that's fantastic.
For me, it's kind of like, I guess it's not really a mentor, but more of an inspiration.
Right. So other than Dawg Nation, is there an organization out there that you'd love to give a shout out to or really admire the work they're doing?
There's several. Colorado Sled Hockey is as you mentioned earlier. Those guys are
great.
They have a great organization, and they're doing what they can, and we're always there going to lift them up and help them, and it does fit right in our role too. Some of the high school
awesome partnership.
We've seen Dakota Ridge Hockey shout the guys out each year. They do a military night, and they work hand in hand with us to choose who we're gonna help out each year, and kids do an amazing job. They each choose a veteran. Every single kid on the team chooses a veteran that they honor.
That's right.
Really, really neat stuff there. And then lastly, really, really fortunate to get to know the members of the Humboldt Broncos, and that's so that was that's really how I got to know Jared Bednar. Jared, a lot of people don't realize, played for the Humboldt Broncos, obviously not that team. And when we were able to help that community through their rough times, that's when Jared reached out to me for the first time. And since then, I've actually brought 7 of those boys of the 13 that survived that accident down to Colorado for
that's awesome
Make-A-Wish type things. And I've been up to Humboldt 3 times myself, including Jared recently for their golf tournament. And that's Jared had me sitting at his table when he went in the Hall of Fame. So that was pretty cool up there.
That's really cool.
But there, when I go stay there, most of the time I actually stay with one of the families. And this past one, Kurt and Celeste Light, who unfortunately lost their son Jacob in the accident, they opened their home to me and just stay in their guest room and
that's great.
And have breakfast with them and their kids. And it's so much better than staying at the hotel.
No doubt.
Like it's pretty cool.
Well, and it's such great evidence that if you continue to be persistent, grind, do the right thing, goodness creates more goodness, success creates more success. Your organization is a great example of that. So lastly, if somebody wants to support, volunteer, learn more, what should they do?
Yeah, our website's pretty new and Native Rank has put it together for us, the revision of it, and it's really easy to find. It's dawgnation.org, and I was really surprised, DAWG nation.org, that wasn't taken already. But I would have
thought Georgia would have taken that one.
I would have thought so too. We were really surprised because we had Dawg Nation Hockey, and someone tells me, DawgNation.org doesn't exist. I'm like, really? And it didn't. I was like,
that's awesome.
Easy for us to get it, easy to navigate to it, and we've got a pretty big presence on Facebook as well. And that one is Dawg Nation Hockey Foundation. So kind of a long one, but when you find that one, there's lots of cool inspirational stories on that, and I try and put something on there every few days.
Awesome. Well, we'll put that in the show notes. I hope people will go visit. Martin, thanks so much for the time and cheers for continued success.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. This podcast has been brought to you by JC Charity and Event Services. If you'd like to find out how I can bolster your efforts and help your team achieve its goals, I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can find me at makingourworldbetter.com. To learn more about the awesome Dawg Nation Hockey Foundation, visit dawgnation.org and find them on Facebook. Check the show notes for links. If you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd give us a thumbs up and leave a review. Until next time, I hope you're inspired to find a way to make our world better.